So I'd just like to start perhaps by asking each of you one thing that stood out for you today so far. I know some of you perhaps have arrived more recently, but what's one thing about Logan and the future of Logan that sort of stood out to you from today so far? Maybe if we start with you, Deva.
I think
we've got some microphones to pass along. Excuse me, there's that one as well. Yeah.
I think it was about multiculturalism, about meeting places and maintaining what we already have. And I think in a number of our workshops we mentioned food and festivals and those cultural activities. I think if we maintain that, that's the theme for me that's coming through in the connectivity, getting A to B.
Great, thanks.
From the business point of view, from the Chamber of Commerce, I'm sitting here today in that role. I worked in a number of communities, both here and overseas, and worked to try and bring them together. And what tends to drive it is that excitement. And from a business community, seeing that we've now got a startup hub in the area just down the road, and seeing more of that sort of stuff rather than losing people to Little Tokyo or up to Brisbane. From a business point of view, when you get some excitement, you get some runs on the board, and you can see them start to work together better. And for me, just seeing the people that we have around the room has been quite exciting, and knowing that this group can make change.
As for me too, I think it's the first time I've really seen grassroots people come together with town planners and everyone in between to come up with ideas and talk about issues that are relevant to them, or things, gives great suggestions of how we can make some changes to make our city even greater. So I've really enjoyed everyone coming together today.
For me, it's the same as the last two summits, actually. I can't believe Logan just keeps generating these enthusiastic people. Like, I thought, this is my third one. Surely they must have run out of them by now. And then you turned up like another couple of hundred of you. Like, you're going to be all right. Like, generate this much enthusiasm and passion, in the middle of the week and stay and listen to us boring nerds all day. You're going to be fine. It's really empowering.
It's the end of the week now.
Yeah, I would agree with Steve. For me, it's just how warm and easygoing, lovely everyone is. But the other thing really is the opportunity with the food and your multiculturalism. It is just perfect. In terms of being able to develop kind of social enterprise models with that can then feed back into the projects that you direct yourself rather than council directing for you, I think is, your best opportunity. Well, I think it'd be really exciting.
Thanks. I sat in on a session, one of the last workshop, and I got to hear about pride of place and hearing your appreciation, knowing this fantastic place that you have, and learning a little bit more about it. And of course that element of multiculturalism, that's just a fantastic thing, that great basis to work from.
So just on that theme there, I'm wondering, Deva, if you could tell us a little bit more about what you do and, what opportunities do you see for strengthening food and multicultural experiences in Logan?
So the multicultural markets that we are referring to is the global markets, or the ECCL global markets, that was known as the Woodridge train station markets on Croydon Road. So it operates that's a marketing plug. It operates every Sunday from 6 a.m. to 12 to 2. So it has a fresh food and vegetable component, and it also has a number of 30-odd food stalls from mostly Southeast Asia, but we also have India, and we have some Europeans, and we have African barbecue. So it's a very, very multicultural store. It is a very sought-after place to be. And it's growing. So we've started off from Croydon Road 12, 14 years ago. We've moved into the Queensland Railways car park, and now we are working with council to extend the footprint into 2 other properties. So it effectively doubles in size. That's a prize of success. And one of the economic impacts of that is it's not only the markets. There are a number of, probably a dozen ethnic, and I call them ethnic supermarkets. And they're like Asian stores or Indian stores or Afghani stores or Arabian or Arabic stores of Middle Eastern descent. So you get all your spices, all your fresh food, all your nuts, all your herbs, as well as your vegetables, and have a meal as well. So it's becoming not only the market, but it's a multicultural, it's a melting pot for Logan. And for us migrants, there's a lot of us around here. That is a place where we meet. On Sundays, we meet our friends, meet our families, meet our fellow country people. So it's becoming that place that we've been talking about, that meeting place. Where to from here? We intend to grow the markets as part of the markets, and that's one component of what our organization does. We used to have the multicultural festival. Those of you who remember the Kaleidoscope Festival, because of funding, we haven't run it for a couple of years, and that multicultural festival, the annual festival, provided grassroots performances and arts. Now, while we have all volunteers, we need help in that space to professionally develop artists and young artists from Logan. But having said that, and some of you would remember who've been around for a while, that some of those young African migrants or refugees, when they first arrived, they formed strong dance groups. Some Cambodian drummers, African drummers we've had, they've gone on to perform in Sydney, in Canberra, at the Parliament House, at the Opera House, and gone to many places. A lot of them have done well. Some of the food vendors have now built their capacity and become restaurant owners. And I speak for myself as being a restaurant owner as well. So we've moved on to a space, and I think our job as community leaders is to encourage those new migrants to do startup business, and then to move them into build a capacity so they could move into small business, and help them how to work with governments and work with all the red tape and all the bureaucracy that's associated with starting a small business.
So you mentioned, I guess, the role of events in being a catalyst to drive long-term change. I wonder, Amy, if you can speak a little bit to your experience with Containerville and other Eat Streets about what the impact has been on local economy from those event-based activities.
Yeah, well, so a little bit of background into Containerville. You probably know it now as Eat Street Markets on the North Shore. The site was a port. It has been Brisbane's port, and the Economic Development Queensland wanted to see a change of perception. They, rather than it just being seen as a port, again, they wanted to see it become this a hub for development, but a hub for parks and a community space as well. So the way that we approached it, we looked to the place. The place had containers. It was really obvious to use that as the first point because we could get them for $1. So that was the one thing that we did. Then we involved locals as well. We had local students. They worked on the containers. We got local businesses to come. And what it is, it's a really good idea to start small, like you were saying with the market. That something like a market or a small pop-up, it allows a business owner to start small. They can test it out. They can build a customer base. And then start to grow from there. And we just tested a lot of different things. We tried different events, different bits and pieces over a 3-week festival, and then we were approached by a market, became Eat Street Markets. They took it and grew it to this amazing thing. And the intent was that site would be developed. And the containers have already been moved. So the great thing with the market as well is that as the influence occurs in that space, it's quite movable to sort of take that further.
So on that, I think it's had this amazing impact in both of your stories about catalysing long-term change, but that comes with a whole host of other challenges with it. I'm wondering whether Bronwyn and Stephen, you can talk about how you found that transition from short-term activations which have, as they've intended to, catalyse long-term change. But what happens then? Like what's needed in that next step to sort of formalise and take things to the next level?
I'll go first. I think there's a few things about tactical urbanism. First of all, you have to make sure it's tactical, as in you're actually trying something out for a long-term game. It's not just a pop-up and it pops up and then it pops and it just goes away. But then to do that, there has to be a plan. Well, what if it works? Well, it could work. Now I've got to do something, yeah. So I think there's a risk there that you do this great idea and you try it out and it actually works and then you've got nowhere to go. We just recently did a project in Hobart where some locals got together and they're doing, trying out extending footpaths, more street trees, more stuff, and they do it temporarily. And the council has actually got a program to keep those people on board and design a permanent space long term. So tactics, you're trying out your tactics to get some long-term game. So, moving forward, keep the same people involved, keep them in the project so that the design intent gets maintained, and you get to build the thing you tested. Keeping on testing all over the place is kind of relatively limited. You have to build the thing you test. So when you start out, assume that you're going to be successful and start putting money away and hiding it in the log so that someone else at council or wherever can't get it, so that when your thing works, you go, oh yeah, I was saving this, I knew this was going to work, and you get to actually build something, yeah?
And what if some of those permanent outcomes might be, in your case, Bronwyn, that other businesses have come in, they've moved in, they've got more of a level of permanency, they've been really successful. So that's obviously the success story that we want to see. But I'm sure in your experience also comes with challenges. And can you talk a little bit more about that journey of when things work well?
It is a very difficult thing to talk about, because when things do work well, people do start making a lot of money, and that often within those structures, a lot of people start falling off within a volunteer kind of process. And so for us, it was always really important that we put in place things where we had some succession planning, but keeping, it's kind of like keeping the elders in the group, that they might not be doing all the hands-on work, but they're still kind of very much involved in, keeping the culture and the intent and the integrity of the group. I think that's the other thing, is that when you do start making, when you do become successful and you start making money, it actually, people do start looking closer at you. And for us, we then started to lose, we didn't lose, I guess, that the council then started putting greater scrutiny on what we were doing. And that might just even be from a health and safety perspective, which is, realistic and required. And you actually just have to know how to grow up as an organisation, as I would kind of say. It was like...
Had to start to ask for permission, not forgiveness.
Yeah. And then, because before that we were just doing it and asking for forgiveness later. So I think that's probably the hardest thing. But like I said, that is the gap that kind of infuriates me at the moment, is that, in our planning process and governance processes, once organisations or groups hit that pivotal peak, there doesn't seem to be anywhere for them to go to be able to keep going, and they're not incentivised or supported. So
possibly the opposite in your experience, maybe.
Yeah. Well, there's also the political thing, that in a area, that if one area gets really successful, then down the road, like at Mooloolaba or something, goes, oh well, hang on, we need, where's mine? And I want, and someone else will say, and then they start throwing money in different areas. And so I think there's kind of, like I said, there's that top-down thing that needs to be kind of, a little bit more flexible and responsive to what's going on, to enable these groups to be able to work on a long-term basis.
Sure, and I know that that's something in the collaboration creativity, the governance group that we were in before, is talking about how to actually sustain community leadership in the long term. It shouldn't just be short-term action, something that's really got to be invested in and supported in the long term. Just changing tact a little bit, Uncle Barry, you've lived in Logan for a long time. I'm really interested to hear what changes have you seen in the last 5 years that you think are significant?
I think I've seen a lot of changes, some for the good and some for the bad. I noticed a lot of shops have been closing down, and sometime you go to the shopping centre, it looks a bit more like a ghost town. But I'm really excited to see that the growth in all the multicultural shops everywhere. So everywhere there's an empty shop, a community or a family group will get together and start up a business enterprise. And I think that's fantastic. We've got so many different restaurants around here that I try to go in and at least have one meal in each one to support them. Yeah, I know parking's getting pretty hard in some areas, but that's okay. You know, if you have to walk an extra 100 metres, doesn't matter. But yeah, but I think, you know, we seem to be getting a younger community. I see so many young mums with babies in prams or expecting babies now, and you know, our population's definitely on the increase. We see a lot of young people on the streets at night time around the station or around this end of town with the food vans, but you know, there's really not much for adults or to do after dark here. It's very hard to get a cup of coffee anywhere in Logan Central, you know, unless you go to the fast food outlets. But I think, you know, we've seen different waves of migrants and refugees come in, and each one brings their own culture, and they establish their own identity pretty quick. And it's really exciting to see something new. I'll go in and have a look at the shop and try and buy something.
Fantastic. And speaking of that, Stuart, involved in the Chamber of Commerce, I'm interested to see, like, what's your perspective on the changes in business activity in Logan in the last sort of few years?
Well, I think Uncle Barry's mentioned there three incredibly important groups. He was talking about the youth, and as a Chamber of Commerce, we're just forming a junior Chamber of Commerce and looking at things like pop-up stores and shopping centres where kids can take their ideas and see if they're going to work. We've had Startup Hub weekends where we've brought in groups of kids that are actually been mostly playing games, but teaching them that you can take an idea and actually do something with it. And one of those has got up and is running and is now generating power in Papua New Guinea for communities using old laptop batteries. And these things will run for 10 years with some solar panels. And that just came out of a startup weekend. He mentioned the migrants, and we're looking at an entrepreneur series for migrants, because while it's great to get a job, it's even better if you can run it yourself. So looking at ways that we can reduce the barrier to entry for migrants to start their own business. And I know Deva's been working with that. Things like, you know, a $6,000 feasibility study, you know, on a small business just puts them out of business. That doesn't make sense. And it's something that we're going to be addressing with the council very soon. So the third group you mentioned was the mums. And there are so many mums now that are starting small businesses and running them successfully. This idea of micro businesses, this is the place that it's going. We're seeing you know, micro businesses and small businesses contributing 70% to GDP. We're killing it, but because there's so many of us. But if we can have more of that in Logan, I know the council are very big on supporting small businesses, supporting the Chamber of Commerce. We see these three main areas and drivers to help bring up the community and work together rather than, you know, that's business over there and we're trying to do some community stuff here. It needs to be together. We, as a community, we actually need to work together stronger. And I think that this kind of forum is absolutely vital.
So how can an organisation like a Chamber of Commerce kind of help accelerate that relationship between business and community?
So we hold events that are specific to that particular focus. So last Wednesday we had the Beacon breakfast at Mabel Park High. It wasn't at Mabel Park High, it was actually run by Mabel Park High. The students ran the event. We had a lot of business leaders in the room. We had a lot of politicians in the room. We had the Minister for Small Business get up and speak. It's awesome that she's in our backyard. You know, I think we're blessed with who we've got in the area. And the Chamber of Commerce is looking to try and bring these people together. Recently we've started talking to all the other chambers of commerce in the area, so not just focusing inward on what we can do, but how can we learn from, say, Redlands or Ipswich or Greater Springfield or South Brisbane. So we are actively trying to build a bigger community. And these are actions that we're taking right now.
Great. And just one last question for all of you is, what's one piece of advice or one recommendation you would make to this group moving forward in planning for the future of Logan based on your lived experience, your business experience, your experience from other places? What do we really need to see? What's one piece of advice?
Well, I've got the microphone, so I get to go first. Look, what I would say is this kind of event is like drinking from the fire hose. You've got so many ideas, and there are so many amazing things that you could do. Just pick one. Pick one to get behind, and just see if you can make that happen. If you get that, next time we'll have a summit, I'll give you a second one, and then we'll see if we can get that happening. Yeah? Great.
I think from a small business person sort of experience, I think I like the idea of ask for forgiveness later and go for it. So
we might get ourselves in trouble now.
Yeah.
After.
But I think from a small
today.
business background, I think the thing is you take a chance. You take a calculated chance, and I think those of you who can have that opportunity to take the calculated chance, go into business, and that's I've been in it for 28 years, haven't looked back. So, give it a go.
Can I just get a show of hands from the audience who would say that they are involved in a small business in some way or local trade, commerce? Number of people? Yep, great. Most of the panel, yeah? Yeah. Uncle Barry, what's your advice?
It's probably not advice. I'd like to see that we extend our cultural activities around the place. We used to have that Kaleidoscopes Festival, and I'd like to see maybe on Harmony Day we could close off Wembley Road to traffic and have float parade, marching bands, dancers, performers, and end up at a big cultural festival. I know back in 2000 we had the Olympic Flame was here overnight in Logan Gardens, and we had thousands of people there that night with to watch the flame and markets and everything. And we started a multicultural project, and I think we've got about 13 nationalities. All did murals of their particular one. So we've got Aboriginal one, Torres Strait Islander, Cook Islands, Samoa, New Zealand, Colombia, and Romania. But I'd like to see all the other communities get behind it and come up with their own design and go from the Logan Gardens right along the footpath to Logan Brothers and the council. To represent all our cultures, I think that would be great.
Nice.
Look, mine is to get united behind a theme, but don't become divided about the detail. Yeah, because people love investing in stuff that communities united behind because it's a low-risk investment. But then if you start to bicker and thing, they say, I'll spend my money in another part of the council. Yeah. So once you get united behind a theme, just make sure you don't fall out over the detail and you'll get there. Yeah?
Yeah, that's a really, 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 really good one. I would probably just agree with that and add have fun. Just don't make it too serious. Don't think that you have to have everything that you need. Again, just kind of get behind something, and it's amazing what works out when you're with some people that are kind of quite interesting, and you don't all have to be best mates either. I think that's one perception that, the MRA was made up of people. We didn't all hang out together. We weren't like this close-knit bunch of people, but we were all kind of, united by a theme, by one thing, and we didn't all agree, but we just got on and just had heaps of fun and did stuff.
I'm going to disagree a little bit. A sort of 10, 15 years ago when I started doing all this stuff, you you couldn't ask for permission, so you just had to go ahead and do it. These days, councils are so supportive of this. So if you ring them up and you say you have an idea, they will sit with you and they will help make it happen. Yes, things are slower from the council side of things, but they are backing this. They are excited by your ideas. So work with them, tell them your ideas and make them happen. You still need to put in a lot of effort to make it happen, and it's always yours, you own it. But if you want it to be streamlined and become a success, like, some of the examples that have been here, you do eventually have to work with them, and they are trying really hard to make it happen. So these days, it's been 15 years. 15 years ago, we had to just go out and do it. We had to, guerrilla, chuck a board up and, what we'd like to see. But these days they're doing it and they want to hear from you. They call you community champions. You are community champions to them and they want to hear your ideas and they want to help. So talk to them.
Thank you so much, Amy, Bronwyn, Stephen, Uncle Barry, Stuart and Deva for sharing your insights with us. And I think it's really exciting to hear from the horse's mouth about how community organising can help accelerate some of these changes in our master plan. Thank you so much.